Hello and welcome to another midweek edition of Championship Predictions from the Unsport Podcast. I'm Craig Savage and with me as always is Daniel Cody and Charlie Betts. Let's have a quick recap of Matchday 33 from the weekend. 5 perfect scores overall. There was 2 for myself on Derby Forest and Blackburn Coventry, which both ended 1-1. Daniel Cody also got 2 perfect scores with Barnsley versus Millwall and Preston versus Huddersfield. And Charlie got the 1 perfect score, the final game of Wycombe versus Norwich. So as you can see on the table, I win Matchday 33 with 10 points to Daniel Cody's 9 to Charlie Betts' 5. I extend my lead to 241 points with 42 perfect scores. Daniel Cody's in second place with 223 with 35 perfect scores, and Charlie Betts is 207 with 30 perfect scores. So let's start this midweek edition with the first game of the day. It is Cardiff City versus Derby County. Charlie, both these teams picked up a point at the weekend.
Yeah, I think Derby will be the more happy of the two in the sense of being a goal behind. I think Derby are very reliant on Colin Kazim-Richards. I think that was probably proved at the weekend. So I think if anyone's clever enough to stifle him and therefore stifle Derby's attack, I'm backing Mick McCarthy on that. So I've gone for Cardiff to win 2-0. I think Mick McCarthy will get back to form. And obviously, still a cracking result for him at the weekend, albeit, not the 3 points thereafter. But stop Kazim-Richards, probably stop Derby's potent attack. So 2-0 Cardiff.
Cody?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about this one because, as we said, it could happen for Cardiff at any point. But I don't think it's going to be this one either. Again, a goal from a long throw, a set piece at the weekend, beautifully worked against Middlesbrough. Derby, in the derby against Nottingham Forest, they weren't great, to be honest. They had the lion's share of the ball. They had more shots. But as we saw with the goal, they were largely from distance. So I'm going to back Cardiff to win it. I think they'll stifle them enough. I'm going to go for a narrow 2-1 victory to Cardiff.
Yeah, I think we're all going to have to agree on a Cardiff win, to be honest. This is a lot tighter than you think. Cardiff, obviously, on that fantastic run of form. Obviously, the winning run ended, only picking up a draw. But obviously, Derby, credit due, weren't great, but they picked up that point against Brighton with a cracking strike by Kazim-Richards. I was going to have 2-1 myself, to be honest. I'm going to go for 1-0 to Cardiff City. Up next, it's Coventry City versus Middlesbrough at St Andrews. Cody, both these teams both picked up a point at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Middlesbrough, I think, will probably be happier because given Blackburn's run, Coventry might have felt they were there for the taking. But after the late red cards, they were then probably happy to get the point. It was a good goal by Matty James as well, actually. Well taken. Coventry, despite having very little of possession, created more chances than Blackburn. So I don't know which way to go with this one either. But I think Middlesbrough recently, bizarrely, have been a bit better on the road, if anything. Their last away game was a 2-0 win at Reading. And I think they're going to repeat it. I'm going 2-0 to Middlesbrough.
I don't see many goals in this game. Middlesbrough are acceptable conceding goals at the moment, which is unlike Millwall, really. They want to keep his teams tight. Like they were on that 10-game unbeaten run early in the season. They were tight and they were scoring. Obviously, a few players are out injured at the moment. But I still think they have enough quality to be of Coventry. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Middlesbrough. Charlie?
Yeah, I've gone for the Championship's favourite, well, what was the Championship's favourite scoreline? I think I could probably lean more towards a Middlesbrough win, but I just think that Borough and Coventry at the minute have just both an average of a draw, really. They're mixing, win, loss, draw, this sort of thrown in there. And if being brutally honest, I think that Borough, I don't know, they seem to have that potent attack up front. They don't seem to have that, the way we've just mentioned about, say, Colin Kazim-Richards, or I know it's a different bracket, but Ivan Toney at Brentford or whatever. You don't really have that with Borough. There's no out-and-out person you know is going to get them goals every week. So I just don't see many goals in it. So I'm going to have to go for 1-1 just on the law of averages more than anything.
Up next at John Smith's is Huddersfield Town versus Birmingham. A relegation 6-pointer.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, to be honest, I've been a little bit sneaky in this one because I think Birmingham obviously won at the weekend, so a great result for them. But I just think this is when they get complacent. This is when everyone starts thinking, Birmingham might do it. And I can just see it going the other way again. And I think the old Birmingham will set in. And Huddersfield's last home win, admittedly, in between, it's not been great, but the last home win was 4-1 against Swansea. So I'm backing a little bit of Huddersfield home form here. So I've controversially gone for a 2-0 Huddersfield win against Birmingham.
Cody?
I honestly don't know what to do with this game. It's an absolute stinker to predict again. Because Huddersfield, for the first half at the weekend, were absolutely brilliant. But a bit like Sheffield Wednesday that we'll come to later, if you don't take your chances, you're not going to win games and you're going to drop into that battle. Huddersfield are dropping like flies. The 4-1 Swansea game came out of nowhere. And aside from that, they've been pretty woeful for the last month. No goals and 5 conceded in the last 2 games. I know they're back at home, but I think Birmingham are going to win it. Halilovic finally came to the party at the weekend, scored a cracking winner against QPR. And I'm going to bank on them to win again. I'm going to go for 2-0 to Birmingham.
This is a tight one, to be honest. I don't see this being the game of the day, but think this will be cagey. I don't think there'll be enough quality. So this will end 3-3. No, I'm joking. I think Championship favourite scoreline will probably be the fairest result I can actually go for. It just won't be a great game. Won't be many shots on target. So I'm going to stick with 1-1. Up next in the new den, it is Millwall versus Preston. Charlie, Preston winning 3-0 at the weekend is probably their best win of the season.
Yeah, but if you look at their away form, for example, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. So, how do you read into that? I completely agree with you. It's a cracking performance, but this is the issue with Preston, is they'll have a performance like that, and then they'll throw a wobbly the following game, and that's what I'm banking on. I think Millwall, just purely on consistency recently. I know that Millwall necessarily haven't been playing the best football and probably could still eke a bit more out of that squad. I still think that on a consistency basis, I'm just banking on them grinding out a 1-0 win, but I don't think it'll be a pretty game either.
Ready?
I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. I don't want to keep bringing out my favourite stat every episode, but Preston had less possession, won the game 3-0. Millwall edged possession against Barnsley, got edged out on the scoreline. Millwall are so hard to predict because they have really convincing performances, and then they don't turn up for a couple of games. Barnsley were well worth their win at the weekend. Based on the inconsistency of the two sides, the safest thing I can do is go for a draw. And based on the fact that they're both capable of drawing a blank, I'm going to go for a goalless draw. This is going to be my stinker of the week, so 0-0.
So glad you said that. I could see it being a draw as well, to be fair, but I wasn't sure which one to go for. But you've made my mind up now. Obviously, Millwall, disappointing against Barnsley. I'm going to go 1-1 or 2-2. I'm going to go 2-2. Up next to the City Ground, it is Nottingham Forest versus Luton Town. Codes. Oh, wow. Horrible first half. Magnificent second half of Luton Town.
Yeah, I've got to say, that Luton first half performance home at Sheffield Wednesday was up there with Brentford away last season in the 7-0, where it was 5 maybe at half time, 4 or 5 definitely.
5, I think, yeah.
I can't remember. I've tried to get it out of my memory, but there was flooding back as that Sheffield Wednesday first half occurred. We'll take away the fact that Luton should have been 5 down at half time, but because in the second half, they were absolutely sublime. Sheffield Wednesday, very brittle confidence. We'll get to them later, but that's going to give Luton such a lift. I can see it being a Luton win again, but Nottingham Forest are in a decent run themselves. The only guarantee is that it's 1-0, 1-1 or 0-0. I'm going to go 1-0 Luton.
The thing is, what Luton didn't do in the first half, they weren't aggressive enough. They were too nice. They respected Sheffield Wednesday quite a lot, and they got pummeled. In the second half, more aggressive, more attacking, gambled a bit more. They got more players into the box, and they got their rewards from it. Forest, I'm not sure about Forest. Obviously, good point. Weren't great. Reasonable strike. Keeper should have done a bit better. Marshall. I don't think it's going to be 1-0. I'm going to go 2-1 to Luton. 2-1 Luton. Charlie.
Against my better judgment, I've gone 1-0 Forest as a staple score. But the problem is Luton have become very difficult to predict. And yesterday was a prime example of that, like you say. I don't know, you lads saw the game, how much of that half-time interval you could put on Nathan Jones and the revival in the second half, whether that was a tactical sort of thing or, but there is slight issues defensively. And all I'm banking on, I've gone for 1-0 Forest, is A, to try and claw some points back on YouTube, but also, although Forest up front aren't necessarily the greatest, they've got clinical strikers. And by the sounds of it, yesterday, if they'd have had someone who was a bit more clinical, could have put the game out of sight, if that makes sense. So I'm banking on Luton defensively being maybe just as poor as they were in the first half against Wednesday. However, that could blow up in my face as Luton obviously were then scintillating in the second half. So I think just maybe a little bit more clinical. I need to get some points back, so 1-0 Forest, even though I probably don't believe it myself.
Up next at the Matchday Stadium is Reading versus Blackburn. Charlie, Blackburn stopped the rot.
Yeah, but if I'm honest, I'm still not convinced by them. I've given, this is my game of the day. I've gone for 5 goals, 3 Reading, 2 Blackburn. Reading are not on a great run, but then they do this. They go 2 or 3 games and then they end up like pulverising someone. But then they're just defensively so worrying. Coventry are poor away from home, but Blackburn only got a draw against them. I just think both teams are not necessarily defensively as sound as they could be. Tony Mowbray, a draw, that would have bought him a bit more time, but I can't see him being there forever. And that erraticness will continue. 3-2 Reading. I think this is where Reading bounce back.
Well, Charlie, you say, obviously, you don't think this game will be 3-2, but I don't think anyone expected Luton 3, Sheffield Wednesday 2.
True.
I'm not sure about this game. This is a really hard week, this midweek. It's really hard. Both these two teams not been good form. I think Reading will win this game 1-0. Cody.
I didn't expect when I had this down that we'd all have gone for a Reading win, but that performance at the weekend is exactly what they needed. They were gritty, they were defensively solid. They nicked a scruffy goal from a set piece again. And do you know what? It's exactly what they needed. They're back in form, and I think they're going to win this game convincingly. And I know that I'm going to get the eyebrow raised from Craig Savage, but I have gone for 4-1 to Reading.
Moving on to Wednesday, Norwich City versus Brentford. Massive game at the top of the Championship. Norwich, I watched the game against Wycombe. Nothing spectacular. Got the job done, to be fair. And that's a good Champions performance. Just getting over the line against a bottom team. Thought they would make it hard for themselves. Brentford, back to winning ways again. Obviously beat Stoke, went 1-0 down early from another David Raya mistake. But they clawed back to win 2-1. But I'm going to go for 1-0 to Brentford. Charlie?
Well, yeah, I'm going the other way, 1-0 Norwich. And I think you mentioned it about Norwich's amazing home form, but I think this is where champions are made. And I think this is the sort of game so far that Norwich have been very good at. Might not have been playing well, but they eke out 1-0 wins. What worries me a little bit about Brentford, and I'm not going on about the mentality thing, was even going to goal down to Stoke. It's just that kind of stuff that it doesn't inspire you with confidence necessarily that they're going to have enough to get over the line. And I think it's these games that are pivotal that Brentford don't always perform as well in. So on that basis, a clear champions performance from Norwich stifled the game. I don't think it'd be pretty to watch as much as this is two of the better teams in the league. So I think Norwich will probably set up to try and, just put out as many fires as they can and then tire out Brentford a bit. So I'm thinking late goal for Norwich, 1-0 Norwich, but champions performance, they'll grind it out.
Cody?
I completely disagree with both of you. I've gone for this to be a pretty entertaining game with a clear winner. So, I mean, the thing that scared me about Brentford is, yes, they're back to winning ways. Take out Sheffield Wednesday, where, let's be honest, they were out of confidence. The David Raya situation is something I've mentioned before, probably towards the end of last season, which still concerns me now. But Norwich are back at the scintillating best, and I think they're going to run away with it now. I know we said this before Christmas, and then it went wrong again, but they've got almost the full squad fully fit. Brentford have not been convincing despite getting back to winning ways. I think Norwich are going to win this easily. I'm going to go for 3-1 to Norwich.
Up next at the King Prince Foundation Stadium is Queen's Park Rangers versus Barnsley. Coach, Barnsley, do you think they'll make the playoffs?
It's looking more and more likely, isn't it? They're one of the few teams that have actually provided pure consistency. I mean, at home this season, since Ishmael took charge, it's been one of the most consistent things in the Championship. And it's just at a time where QPR are dropping off the boil. We mentioned they've been better away from home for a lot of the season, but after 3 successive home wins, they're now faltering on the road. I don't think I can go against Barnsley at the minute. I know it's going to blow up in our faces, and we did it with Swansea the other week against Huddersfield, but you have to go with a form book sometimes, and Barnsley is a good example. Charlie Austin will still get his goal a game, so I'm going to go for 2-1 to Barnsley.
Charlie?
I've gone for 4 goals, so 1 more than Dan. I've gone for 2 each. And similar sort of story to what Dan was saying, but I just think following that loss to Birmingham, I still don't quite know how that happened. It was a mad 10 minutes by the looks of it for QPR. A bit humbling, and I think actually they'll build from that again. I just think they'll be a bit tighter given what's happened at the weekend. So Barnsley are in fantastic form as well, like we say. So 2 goals each. There's not really any logic to this. I just can't split them. But I think there'll be goals in it because with both teams there always is. So 2-2.
Obviously, both teams in good form. Barnsley unbeaten in the last 6. Oh, this is a really hard one. It's whether Barnsley concede. Do you know what? I'm going to go for a wild one. This is probably going to be my wild pick of the week. I'm going to go for QPR 2, Barnsley 3. Up next at Vicarage Road is Watford versus Wycombe. Charlie, Watford, ill-disciplined. Chalobah's suspended for 2 games, and João Pedro suspended for a game and got sent off.
It's worrying, yeah. I think it is worrying. I think it's possibly the worst time of the season to have that kind of ill-discipline as well. You're coming into the crunch of midweek games, as we well know, recording these 3 games a week. It's not easy, so you need as many players fit, ready to go without silly sort of suspensions and stuff. I've gone for a Watford win. I think they'll grind one out against Wycombe purely because they're the only team that I would have backed Watford to win against after that result. Just because Wycombe unfortunately been struggling so much away from home. So I've gone for 2-0. I think they'll get one early. Wycombe might try and chase the game, and then there'll be a second later on. So 2-0 Watford.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the same route of Watford win as well. Same philosophy, how you said it. Concede no goal. If it was at Adams Park, I think, I would have to agree on your scoreline. Obviously, they'll get the second goal, and then obviously Wycombe try to really sharp shot. Might go for a little bit and get caught in the counter attack. But at home, Watford, I could see them scoring again. Obviously, no Chalobah, no João Pedro. Obviously, Deeney's still out. Maybe Andre Gray might get a run out, even though he's been pretty poor this season himself. But, I think Watford will win this game 3-0. Cody?
Well, I'm disagreeing with you both this midweek, which means I'm either going to be top of the table by Wednesday night or behind Charlie. So one of the 2 things is going to happen. I honestly believe, look, I know Wycombe didn't quite get the result in the end today, but they were solid. They gave Norwich a good game. They were brilliant against Reading. They were solid at Millwall. And Watford, normally earlier in the season when teams defended deep against them, they relied on João Pedro to nick them a goal, and it was normally a good goal as well. They haven't got that luxury now. So I'm starting to think that Watford are going to draw a blank in this game. Jonathan Woodgate basically made the game what he wanted it to be, which as a manager with basically 1 year's experience, that's quite a worrying sign for me towards the end of the season. So I'm going to bank on Wycombe to remarkably nick a point here. It's my second stinker. My one of Wednesday night. It's going to be 0-0.
Up next at Ashton Gate, it is Bristol City versus Bournemouth. Cody, Bristol City, it was a great start with Nigel Pearson in midweek, even though he wasn't in the dugout, but perfect start in the dugout. A 3-1 away win at Swansea.
Yeah, and I think we should be fair here. At half-time, Swansea had 13 shots, 6 on target, and Bristol City had no shots whatsoever, and it was still 0-0. And it's about staying in the game when you have halves like that. And you were saying it the whole way through the first half of the Luton game, going back to that, was stay up 1-0, stay up 1-0. And just letting in less goals or not letting in conceding when you have one of those spells makes such a difference. But again, 30% possession, they won 3-1. It's the tail of the Championship. You're not going to score direct from a corner every week. But Bristol City, it's the Nigel Pearson effect. I said in the Bristol City episode, they'll be up near the playoffs. I can't go against them. Bristol City are going to get a result in this game. But Bournemouth were impressive. As we just discussed off air, they won ugly. They did exactly what they needed to do. So I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline for the first time today. 1 apiece.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go for, I don't know. I just have to say, I'm going to go for Bristol City. Yeah, I'm really convinced of Bristol City. But Bournemouth, they won ugly. They really won ugly. I was actually quite impressed that they won ugly because it was un-Bournemouth-like from what we've seen over the years with Eddie Howe. You've got to give them credit. Watford, obviously, they were trying to play a bit not pretty, but obviously they couldn't do anything. Watford was poor. So, yeah, Bournemouth deserved 1-0 win, to be fair. Bristol City, stuck in the game. Obviously, when you won 1-0 down, you think the worst, but obviously, credit for Drew, got the 3 goals, so fantastic away result. You went 1-1. I don't know. I generally do not know where to go in this one. So I'm going to go 1-0 Bristol City. Charlie.
On the contrary, I'm going for a resounding Nigel Pearson display. Just on the basis that I think what was brilliant from Bristol City's point of view, really, really quickly on a side note, was they went a goal down and then produced that. And I think prior to Nigel Pearson coming in, they'd have folded. I think that was the story of their season, really. Let a goal in and they unfortunately collapsed. So that's got to hold them in good stead. And I just think that, yes, good results from Woodgate so far. Just remember what it was like at Borough, though. They had moments like this where they would grind out a win and then they would get thumped 3 or 4-0. So that's what I'm banking on. 3-0, Nigel Pearson masterclass.
Up next at Hillsborough is Sheffield Wednesday versus Rotherham, a Yorkshire derby, a relegation 6-pointer. Cody, Sheffield Wednesday, probably their best 45 minutes all season, and then their absolute worst 45 minutes of the season, and they still didn't get any points.
Yeah, I would be quite scared if I was a Sheffield Wednesday fan based on that, because it was the collapse after the first one went in that worried me. And I wouldn't be shocked if there's a manager in place by Tuesday, as in a temporary solution for the rest of the season. Because the caretaker business, it was working really well at the start. He was galvanising them. But that's 4 defeats in a row, 5 in 6. I just feel like something has to change there or they're going to be going down now. Having said that, a bit like Charlie said in one of the other games earlier, if there's a team you want to face, it's Rotherham at home. 5 defeats in a row now, albeit all against very good sides, probably just Forest who are out of position at the minute. I can only see it being a draw because I can't fancy either team to win this game. And that's the only reason I'm doing it. I've got no other logic. I'm just going to go for 2 apiece because both defences are woeful at their worst.
Charlie?
I've gone for a sneaked Rotherham win by 2-1. I think obviously their home form was slightly better. Admittedly, they lost to Bournemouth and Norwich at home, but prior to that, 3 straight wins. But, I think the Sheffield Wednesday thing revealed yesterday their brittleness, and it also showed, just to add on to Dan's point about a caretaker manager, and it's great as a stopgap. But an experienced manager maybe manages that game a little bit better. You boys obviously watched it, you could comment better, but you can, from any standard of football, you can notice the flow of a game. You can see when the tide's starting to turn a bit. I think this caretaker thing has to stop. They have to appoint someone this week because they're on the slide now. And I think that will continue. I think mentally this would really hit them. To be 2 goals up, best performance of the season. For me, on that basis, I think Rotherham win 2-1, just because they're slightly better going forward than Wednesday at the minute. But I don't think it'll be a pretty game.
My worry is obviously when you go 2-0 up, you very comfortable. You didn't take the chances, because they had about 9 corners in the first half. Few one-on-ones. I think Sluga made 1 save out of all that, from what I can remember. Obviously, they scored 2 goals. But second half, they were absolutely hoping. You've got to give Luton credit, obviously. But Sheffield Wednesday had 1 half chance in the second half. Once they conceded 1 goal, you knew Sheffield Wednesday were going to lose that game. You just knew. The confidence, as soon as the first goal, the confidence was shot. I think that's a massive blow for them. That deflates Sheffield Wednesday's confidence. And I don't think playing Rotherham in a derby is the team they probably wanted to play, to be fair. Rotherham will want to play. They do tend to pick up points, and it's a derby. I think they're going to win this game, Rotherham 2-0. And the final game at the Bet365 Britannia Stadium, it is Stoke City versus Swansea. A very rare home defeat for Swansea, Cody.
Yeah, it was a bizarre set of circumstances. We already mentioned in the Bristol City bit how The fact they weren't ahead at half-time was bordering on miraculous. Dan Bentley in goal for Bristol City had one of the games of the season from any goalkeeper in the league. But Swansea have thrown in a couple of results like that now where their defence has just completely capitulated. Bristol City, Huddersfield a couple of games before. I don't really know what to do with it because Stoke have become a decent team at home overnight as well. Having said that, their 2 back-to-back wins are against Luton and Sheffield Wednesday, who, as we've mentioned, were both having their troubles at the time. Whenever Stoke have played a good side, albeit away from home recently, they've folded, they've lost, and they've not looked like scoring. If you take out that Raya howler, they've not really produced a great deal. So, against my better judgment, I'm going back to the law. Swansea 2-0.
Charlie?
I was going to go with the law and go with Swansea 2-0, but no, I'm going to change it actually. I think maybe the fragility of Swansea, but yeah, so I'm banking on Michael O'Neill special 1-0.
No, I think Swansea will bounce back, to be fair. As Craig said, Stoke have been better at home recently, but Swansea will really want to bounce back. They've still got 2 games in hand. We keep saying it. They've still got 2 games in hand over the teams at the top. They need to pick up a win here. Just obviously because Norwich and Brentford are playing each other. They must get 3 points from me. And I'm going to think they're going to do that. But I think it'll be a lot tighter than the 2-0 that Cardiff. I'm going to go for 2-1 instead to Swansea City. And let's have a quick recap of what we just predicted. Daniel Cody has gone 4-1 to Reading against Blackburn. Charlie's going for 3-0 Bristol City. He thinks the Nigel Pearson effect will still continue. And for myself, I'm going for a wild 3-2 game of the week, Barnsley away at QPR. And those are our predictions for this midweek. Do you agree with us or disagree with us? Let us know in the comment section down there. And while you're down there, give us your predictions for this midweek. Give this video a like, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at Honest Football 3. And we'll see you next time.